Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Star Wars Destiny 1d6. Each week we're going to talk through 6 Star Wars Destiny related topics for about 2 to 3 minutes each, just to update you guys on some of the news that's come out and some deck ideas that we've had here at Cardboard Force Ghosts. So we'll get started with the first topic. We're going to talk about store championships and other tournament announcements. We all know that Worlds is coming up, not this weekend but the next, and everybody should be really excited about that. There's been a lot of Worlds testing going on. But there's some other tournaments that are on the horizon that should get people really excited for organized play in Star Wars Destiny. The first is that FFG announced the store championship locations, and they have a date window, but they don't give you an exact date on their list. You can go on there and see where store championships are all across the U.S. There are a ton of store championships compared to some other FFG games. The state I'm in New Mexico, there's rarely a Star Wars anything store championship from FFG. The stores just aren't proactive enough with ordering kits and trying to get on the list for store championships. We've got 2 locations for Destiny, and that really speaks to the game's popularity. I think for the last 2 to 3 years, we've been trying to get the stores to apply for a card game or an Imperial Assault store championship, and we finally secured a couple, so that's pretty exciting for us locally. I know my old meta in Wisconsin, there's a ton of locations. I think I saw like 6 or 7, so they've got plenty of store championships to attend. I think we saw some previews of the prize support. Some people posted some pictures. It looks like it's a spot gloss Captain Phasma card for the top 2, and then an alt art the best defense as the participation prize. So, looks pretty exciting. Make sure you attend. If you attend that, you can earn a regional buy or a buy on the first round of a regional that'll happen later in the year. So, there's definitely a lot on the line. The other tournament I want to talk about is Team Covenant has announced that 2 weeks after Worlds, I think, I have to look up the date exactly, they are having a Star Wars Destiny weekend in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's going to be 48 players. There's a pretty big entry fee, but it includes a box of SOR, so if you haven't secured all your boxes and you want to go to Tulsa for that weekend, that's one way to get one. They're going to have a big tournament on Saturday where SOR will be legal, and they'll also have draft pods going all weekend where pods of 6 players can sign up and draft through a feed of SOR. They haven't fully explained the rules on the draft format yet, but I'm pretty excited to try it out. We're going to be heading out there. I think we're heading out Thursday night, and we'll be there through Sunday. So we should get a lot of Star Wars Destiny in. We'll try to take some videos or try to take get some deck lists and things to put on the website and into this weekly news feed afterwards. If anything, you can follow us on Twitter while we're there for the weekend, both for the tournament and for some of our draft results. So yeah, lots of exciting tournaments coming up, lots of announcements. The next topic is talking about that draft format. So Team Covenant has a draft format that they're going to release, I guess, at this event. And it sounds like 6 people sign up, they get a feed of SOR, and they take a draft sheet that has the instructions for them. So it's kind of going to be a surprise while we're there. But I thought I'd talk a little bit about the draft format that we tried out at my old meta just a bit ago. And what we did for our draft format, obviously this kind of depends on packs being available, which has been a little bit hard with Awakenings, and looks like it might be hard with SOR for a while, but eventually we'll get over that, and there's lots of cool formats we can try out. I played Dice Masters a lot, so we kind of based our draft format off how a lot of us former Dice Masters players used to draft. But we drafted in pods of 6 or 8, and what we would do is we would buy a number of packs equal to the number of players in the pod. So if we had 6 players, we would buy 6 packs. We would open 3 packs, each player, and put all of the dice to the center. Put that in one pile in front of you. Open the other 3 packs, push all the dice to the center, and put that in another pile in front of you. And you'd pick up one of those piles, you draft one card, and you pass the packs left all the way around the table. So it's going to be 15 passes. You're probably not going to see your dice cards back again right away. Rare drafting is real in this game because dice cards are obviously important. But every once in a while you take a battlefield or something else that's really vital to your deck over a dice card. But yeah, so you draft 3 packs left, draft 3 packs to the right. And the way we did it is you could supplement this with either the Kylo Ren starter or with the Rey Finn starter. So you obviously had a pretty big slant towards blue characters and blue upgrades. They became a little powerful. We did this a couple times, and it worked out really well. You obviously see a lot of Rey, you see a lot of Finn, you see a lot of Trooper, you see a lot of Kylo, but you also see some really cool decks. One guy I know drafted Elite Akbar, so he had E Akbar, E Rey, and that was pretty fun. He almost ran a mill deck in our draft format. It was a lot of fun. One thing that we did, I think our second or third time we tried drafting, is we said, okay, now that everybody kind of has a collection at this point, you can supplement with either one of the starters and any generic characters. At the time, we were just using Awakenings, so you had one character per faction per color, but you could supplement your deck with hired guns, Padawans, rebel troopers, stormtroopers, things like that. And that seemed to work a little bit better. It lets you have the color selection that you wanted based on the events and supports you drew. I've seen some people talk about removing the villain-hero restriction. I don't recommend that. I feel like that's a pretty important part of the game to take out just for the draft format. Anyway, so our starter draft supplement, I guess we call it kind of like semi-constructed or semi-sealed play. It's pretty fun. We're really excited to try it out once we get new starter sets eventually, but for now I think it works great with either Awakenings or SOR cards. So if you want to try it out and let me know, that'd be great. Topic 3, health points versus action efficiency. This is more of a discussion topic, and I'd like to hear some feedback from people on this. I've been doing a lot of testing with some of my friends. I'm not going to be able to attend Worlds, but I've been helping them test over TTS. And I noticed that a lot of the popular decks have really good action efficiency, and there's nothing wrong with that. These action-efficient characters are really powerful. It's one of the reasons Vader Raider is so great, right? You roll in Vader, you discard a card to resolve his dice if it's a good face, and it just lets you claim and go first faster. Other action-efficient characters are Rey, right? You throw a Hold Up Blaster on Rey. Now you have 2 actions before your opponent gets to go. A lot of times, once a Han Rey deck really gets going, they take their entire turn before you even take your action. It eliminates things like removal and other stuff. So these are really powerful abilities that you have. But a lot of these decks, just like Vader Raider and Han Rey, only have 2 characters. So I think Han Rey comes in at 20 health, Vader Raider comes in at 21. That's not a lot of health compared to some of the other decks you can run out there. If you can down one of their characters, it kind of eliminates half the deck. That's where I think you kind of have this factor of survivability versus action efficiency. Han Rey and Vader Raider are obviously very good decks. They're going to win lots of tournaments. And a lot of that is through the aggressive boost. Just like Django, get your damage out, get it out fast. But if you can add some survivability to your deck, some Protect or something else, or Guardian, it'll really help your deck out, I think. So recently, this is kind of bleeding into the next topic, but I've been trying to optimize the health points in my deck while still keeping a somewhat aggressive tone to my deck. I'm not sure what I think about it yet. I think you kind of need a balance of the two. One of the reasons I think Han Rey is so good is, they have action efficiency and a low health point total, but they have good ways to compensate for that low health point total. Han's got shielding constantly, especially once you get an Infamous out, and he's also got second chance to keep him coming back time and time again. So having some sort of damage and survival mitigation is really helpful. Having a lot of shields can be really helpful too. But just in general, there's this balance of health and survivability, whether it's healing or shields, versus action efficiency and speed. And right now it seems like a lot of the decks are leaning towards action efficiency, but I urge people to try out decks that have high survivability, whether it be control or health and character survivability. It could definitely impact your local meta and shake things up. So we'll jump right to the next topic. These kind of bridge together, and that's this week's deck tech. I posted the Go Rogue article yesterday, and I've got a couple more videos that I took at the store tonight. I need to add commentary to them. But recently, I've been running this Kylo, Dooku, Tusken Raider deck on TTS to help my friends test for Worlds. And it's a really powerful deck. So Kylo, Dooku, and the Tusken Raider come in at 29 points of health, which is a lot, right? And even adding Dooku just adds more shields and survivability to the deck. A lot of times people go for Kylo or the Tusken first, and it just lets you load Dooku with upgrades that destroys things. I see it as somewhat similar to Vader Raider and somewhat similar to E Kylo, E Dooku. Both of those are really good decks, like great decks. And this is just one of those adjustments of those decks. Just like you could swap out some events, you're swapping out some of your character dice. So Vader Raider comes in at 21 points of health, and Vader obviously has better die faces than Kylo and Dooku. But Vader's at 13 points of health, whereas Kylo and Dooku combine for 21 points. That's a lot of survivability. I found a lot of times I can outlast Vader Raider just by having more health. I mean, they could take out one of my characters and I'll still probably be ahead in the race of how much health we have left towards the end of the game. I think it's really powerful to have this much health for your opponent to burn through, especially when you start considering that yellow and blue villains have some of the best control events out there. You can have 2 copies of Electroshock, 2 copies of He Doesn't Like You, Feel Your Anger, Isolation, Deflect. I mean, that's 10 removal events right there. Plus, you now have access to flank since you have 3 characters. The big disadvantage, just like we talked about in the last topic, is without action efficiency, you're probably not claiming a lot. You still do have the Tusken for a little bit of action efficiency, and a lot of times I found in the early rounds, if I want to claim, if it's essential, I end up not rolling all my characters, which is not ideal. You'd always like to get all of that out of the way. But overall, it's proved to be a pretty powerful deck. It stood its own versus Han Rey, it stood its own versus Vader Raider, and it certainly stands its own against most ranged decks. I found with 2 copies of Deflect, you can tear up just about any ranged deck that's running some modifiers with it. Definitely urge people to try this combination out. When SOR hits, we'll definitely see more combinations, but this was this week's Go Rogue article focusing on, a competitive deck for Worlds that's not completely just your typical Vader Raider or Bala Phasma Trooper kind of deck. If you check back next week, there's going to be another Go Rogue article that'll have a similar styled deck where we get to really high hit point counts and have some pretty good synergy between our characters, but we'll look at the hero side of the playing field. So check back next week for that article and for more videos of the Kylo Dooku Tusken deck. Alright, topic 5, again, just like last week, is going to be our card of the week. I've played quite a bit on TTS this week, and the card that I am picking for this week's card of the week is Scout. It's a card that a lot of people overlook, but in my original pre-release of Awakenings, 12 packs I got or whatever at that, I opened 2 copies of Scout and a copy of Akbar, and I ran this Rey Akbar deck that had 2 Scouts in it, and it was just so fun. So Scout has a Focus Face, a 2 Disrupt for 1 resource, which you almost never use. And the big thing it's got that we want to talk about is it's special. It's got 2 special sides and 1 blank, and the special says, look at your opponent's hand, so you get all the information about their hand. So you know how much control they have, you know how much you can reroll, or whether or not you can use the Force and things like that, and then you discard the cheapest card from it, and if it's a tie, you get to choose. The best thing in Star Wars Destiny is you're only getting 2 resources a turn, so the big expensive things they might not be able to afford, and the cheap things are the things that are probably going to disrupt you the most. I mean, you're discarding things like Logistics that'll let them get those resources, things like Electroshock that cost 1, or He Doesn't Like You that cost 0. That's pretty sweet, and the fact that you get to pick just makes it even better. So I've had a lot of people play this in the last week, trying out different mill decks, both in SOR and Awakenings only. I definitely think it has a sweet spot on Rey. You can put 2 of these on Rey as your first 2 actions if you're the first player, and then roll her in. And if you had Elite Rey, you could potentially roll 2 discard faces and 2 Scout specials, which would pretty much discard their entire hand. It's super powerful. It also obviously works well in Akbar. Just being a 1-cost upgrade in general makes this card really powerful. 1-cost upgrades are great because you can discard them later to play more powerful upgrades. So, if you're saving up for that 3-cost gun or that 4-cost bowcaster once SOR comes out, you can have a Scout on somebody for the first couple turns, hopefully weed out some of their control so you can build up resources and things like that, and eventually just drop something over it that's more powerful. Overall, I really like Scout as a card. I've been playing against a lot of people that play Red Heroes recently, and I've seen this card a lot just as a reducer. I was tempted to put Survival Gear in here, because Survival Gear is definitely one of my favorite cards that I feel like people overlook, but this week Scout definitely takes the cake. I think in this Kylo Dooku Tusken deck, Scout has pulled out my control event from my first hand, or my second hand, a drastic number of times this week. So Scout's definitely a good card for control, and good for just having information, good for scouting your opponent's abilities for the turn. So card of the week, Scout. All right, the last topic is talking about World Prep content. Worlds is coming up next week. People are probably starting to travel in the weekdays next week, so there's a ton of articles out there from a ton of good content providers on Worlds Prep. Like I said, this week's Go Rogue article and next week's are both going to be Awakenings only decks that are focused on having high health points but still having some kind of deck synergy. So we've got some good content coming on CFG, on our stream, and on our YouTube. But there's been a lot of other good content too. StarWarsDestiny.com has been just pumping out these great articles. I think it's called State of the Game or State of the Meta or something, and they're going through all the different, what they expect to be popular decks at Worlds. So they have a deck on article on Han Rey I just read, and they have one on Vader Raider and Phasma Trooper. So if you want to know what you think you might be up against, or if you're not going and you want to know what you're going to watch on the FFG stream, definitely check out StarWarsDestiny.com for those articles. The Jedi Trials podcast and the Knights of Ren just teamed up for kind of like a joint podcast. I think it's posted on the Jedi Trials website, though. And they're talking about Worlds Prep and different decks. So it's a pretty good listen, so if you have time, definitely listen to it. It's always good to get more perspectives on what you see and what you think you'll see when you're at Worlds. Just a couple more websites to go through. ChanceCube had an article recently about how to do tournament prep. I think it was just earlier this week. And it's a pretty good article on what you should think about doing for World Prep, how you test your deck, what you do just to get yourself ready for a big tournament, especially if this is one of your first big tournaments. The Hyperloop recently I think they have 2 articles out of a 3-part article posted where they're talking about the deck that could take World by Storm. Wow. And it's a really good article series. I think they're running Trooper, Night Sister Bala, like a 4-character rainbow deck, and I saw some flack they got on Facebook about it, and I don't think it's warranted. It's actually a really strong deck. Yeah, it's weak to AoE and things like that, and the characters can fall apart easily, but they have a ton of control in that deck, and they have a ton of synergy in that deck too. I definitely think it's a good deck to test against. There's going to be people that run a deck like that, and it's a pretty powerful deck. Night Sister in general could just be a sleeper character that we see at Worlds, especially with people running all these action-efficient decks that claim if you have that Night Sister out there and a ton of dice, you can re-roll them all until you get the ideal damage and off a character. And if you can do that early, it can really pay off. See if I have any other notes here on other websites that I checked. I didn't see anything on Artificery yet. They're mainly focusing on SOR content, but they've got some pretty good stuff about action efficiency there as well. And I saw Tiny Grimes had a video on Worlds Prep too. So definitely check out all the content that's online as you prepare for Worlds. So that's the end of this week's Star Wars Destiny 1d6. We'll be back next week with 6 more topics, probably the day before the Worlds tournament or something. That way we can talk about this other deck tech. Until next time, thanks for tuning in.